Should you all supplement? That is the question I'm going to answer today. Hello, this is Aishan, aka the Omnivorist. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner in Paris, France, and I'm passionate about helping busy moms recover their energy and vitality through real food and healthy habits. Welcome to my weekly series, Ask the Omnivorist, Food and Health Nuggets for Busy Mamas. Now, if you've been following me for a little while, you know that I like to talk about the importance of real food. So basing your diet on real whole foods that are nutrient dense, that are properly prepared, that is the, let's say, indispensable foundation before you start any other health regimen, okay? One of the reasons is that whole foods that are unprocessed or minimally processed, they contain all the wisdom of Mother Nature. Okay, let's say, you know, our understanding of individual nutrients is actually really limited, and scientists are just barely scratching the surface, trying to understand actually how, you know, nutrients or different components of food in a whole food, they're in synergy, they're in harmony with each other. So when you start thinking about, you know, isolated nutrients, whether they're isolated from foods or, you know, manufactured in a lab, then that's when we start getting into trouble. So if you will remember back a few episodes ago, one of those, the basic definitions of real food, it's foods that your great-grandmother would have recognized. So now that should be the right guiding principle. We shouldn't have to leave everything to the experts, if you will. So that's why I think that for most of your nutrient needs, you should try to get them from food. When it comes to real whole foods, it's definitely a question of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. So it's extremely important that you get the majority of your nutrient needs through foods. However, that being said, in this modern world, there actually a little careful supplementation might be indispensable for many of us. Now, let me explain that a little bit. First of all, given our health heritage in our world today, for many of us, you know, we were probably not breastfed or breastfed for too little when we were children. We may have had one too many antibiotics, one too many courses of antibiotics. We may have, maybe we didn't have a real food diet for the majority of our lives. So those all make it so that our health isn't totally optimal to begin with. And then if you if you also consider things like the fact that our nutrients, our soils are much more nutrient poor than they were just a few generations ago. Also, we live in an increasingly toxic world. We have environmental toxins, pesticide residue, air pollution, also the household chemicals and cosmetics, all of that stuff that combine for this to create this chemical soup that we live in. Also, the chronic stress that is inherent in our modern lives for many of us. The lack of often, you know, enough sleep, which we moms know really well. Increasingly less connection with nature and the great outdoors. So yeah, all of these things kind of come together in a perfect storm, if you will, and that's why when we begin to see that there might be some place for supplementation. Now, before I get into what it is that I do and don't recommend, let me just make some definitions. There are basically a few different types of supplements. First of all, you might have a supplement that is going to address a deficiency in your body. So even in the best case scenario, when you're having a great, you know, clean, nutrient-dense diet and so forth, you might still have some deficiencies because of everything we just mentioned. So, you know, I can think about individual, you know, vitamins or minerals, for example, they would fall into this category. The other kind of supplement will be when we start talking about supporting your bodily functions. So, for example, well, these will be called therapeutic supplements, and usually you will have to take these for a specific amount of time. There will be a specific protocol. So, for example, it could be things like, you know, taking a supplement to support your digestive function or your fat digestion, for example. Unfortunately, we've been so brainwashed And so many of us have had, at least in the past, eating low fat or bad fats, and that has actually compromised our ability to digest fats well. So that could be, for example, a supplement that will support that function. Or it could be herbs to support, or an herbal formula to support, adrenal function, which unfortunately adrenal issues are also rampant in our modern world, especially for women, especially for moms. Or it could be, again, a different kind of formula to support, some hormonal function in your body, etc. You get the idea. So these are therapeutic supplements, basically supporting your body so that it can do its magic to keep you well. And at least until your body is able to take over and do that function really well on its own. Now, here's one thing I would caution you against. When it comes to this kind of supplementation, I definitely don't recommend DIYing it, okay? I would highly recommend finding a competent practitioner and working with them so that they can assess your own body's individual needs, and then recommend to you a regimen based on good quality brands that they recommend. However, there are also natural, gentle ways to support your body's functions that you could probably tinker with quite safely. For example, digestion is a really good example. Now, so many of us in our modern world today have some sort of, digestive dysfunction. And I have to say, digestion, now, it is just as important as diet. Because if you're not absorbing the nutrients from the food that you eat, it's really no good, right? So a little digestive aid can be helpful for many of us. So, for example, things like, a splash of apple cider vinegar in some water a little before meals, or digestive bitters are great. Those sorts of things. Also, a little gentle liver support might be beneficial for so many of us. Things like, castor oil compresses, or there are wonderful herbs like nettles and dandelion root, etc. Those sorts of things are more, they're more whole food and more natural, so they're not going to necessarily give you an adverse reaction. But if they do, as always, you should always listen to your body with that. Now, probiotics are another big area. Now, you know that there are a ton of probiotic supplements on the market. Here also, I would definitely recommend working with a practitioner, okay? Because there are many strands on the market, there are many qualities on the market, and depending on what your individual needs are, what works well for you may not be great for the next person. So again, I would really go with somebody who knows what they're talking about there and get a really trusted recommendation for that. However, there are, of course, whole food ways that you can do this. You can incorporate probiotic foods and drinks into your diet. Things like lacto-fermented vegetables like sauerkraut, or kimchi, or lacto-fermented, or rather fermented drinks like kefir, milk kefir, or water kefir. Those are some examples of probiotic foods and drinks that you could incorporate into your diet, which would be really beneficial. Now, now, all of that being said, there are also a few things that I do like to recommend across the board. And once again, it's because these are whole food kinds of supplements. So they're not even really supplements. They come packaged in their whole food form so that it hasn't lost any of that synergy that I mentioned earlier. So things like, for example, good quality cod liver oil. This is something that I have used for myself and for my kids for a long time, especially depending on, if we're in cold flu season. I think it's even more indicated then. That's one good example. Another example would be, for example, whole food vitamin C powder. That's something that you could use either as a preventative during cold and flu season, or if you are sick, you can use it as a supportive measure for your body. And also herbal infusions, like some of the ones I mentioned earlier. Those are also great. Again, the herbal infusions, for example, are incredibly nutritious, and because they are like things like nettles and again, dandelions, different kinds of. There are so many wild plants that are wonderful, and again, because those are in the whole food form, they're going to be much. Your body will recognize them, let's say, whereas they may not recognize an artificial, isolated nutrient that comes in a supplement pill. And again, as always, it bears repeating. Listen to your own body. So if something doesn't make you feel good, just don't do it. So, as I said in the earlier episodes, the most important thing is to base your diet on real whole foods. You know, things like seasonal vegetables, as much as you can imagine, in all kinds of colors. This includes also starchy tubers, also seasonal fruit, pasture-raised meat, wild-caught fish and shellfish, the lacto-fermented condiments we talked about earlier, or drinks. Also, properly prepared legumes can have their place if you are not really gut compromised. Also nuts and seeds, some non-gluten grains, etc. And also, if you do this, and then if you also make sure to include some superfoods, and I have a different definition than the one that you're used to hearing probably. For me, superfoods are things like liver, like grass-fed liver, could be veal or chicken livers, could be fatty fish, it could be shellfish. If you really can't stand the idea of liver, at least not yet, there are desiccated liver pills in the market. There are some good quality products from grass-fed animals. And another thing I would recommend incorporating on a daily basis is bone broth, homemade bone broth. That's another one of those things that is super beneficial and really great to incorporate into your cooking, or even you can have like a warm mug of it when you feel like it. But once again, if you can't make that part of your life regularly, you can also incorporate things like gelatin and collagen powder. From grass-fed animals, good quality products from grass-fed animals. That's always important. And of course, gelatin is great because you can make jello, and that's always fun for the kids. So yeah, that's what, and I would say though, all of these things being said, I don't want you to get like so stressed and hung up about all of this. I really want you to focus first and foremost on, you know, switching your diet to a more nutrient-dense diet, but not primarily because you're going to become healthy, but because it's really good and delicious and pleasurable, and especially when it's shared in good company. Okay? And then as a nice added bonus, maybe your health will improve as well. Okay? So my bottom line for you today is that start with food and try to have as much nutrient density as you can. Incorporate some of those whole food supplements that I mentioned, and research and perhaps consult with a practitioner to explore further and dig deeper into your own individual issues. Okay? So that's what I have for you today. I really hope that this was useful to you. If you would like even more tips and tricks from me, as well as a backstage pass into my own kitchen, be sure to join our free Facebook group, the Mama Reboot Community. I will post the link in the comments. And also, yes, a reminder for my upcoming training next Tuesday, February 13th. That's at 8 p.m. Paris time. It's called Filling the Empty Cup, 3 Ways to Start Waking Up More Energized. Now, I'm going to take the time to explain to you just why it is that modern mamas are so exhausted nowadays, and what you can start doing right away to start reclaiming your energy. And I will also tell you more about my own story of how I came to connect the dots between what I eat and how I feel. Now, you can sign up for that at theomnivorous.com/free webinar. And again, I will post the link for that in the comments. And of course, if you can't make it live, I do have a bonus for live attendees. But if you can't make it, or if time zone's an issue, I will send you a replay link. Yeah, that's what I have for you today. And I really, really hope this was useful to you. And I will see you right here next week. Have a wonderful day.